You're pretty lucky, Deb. That's pretty good then, huh?
Yeah, he also made dinner.
Good training.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
No retraining.
No, he came with these talents, actually.
That's my husband too. He knows how to cook. He knows how to shop. He knows how to clean.
Yep,
He's so good at it. I stay out of his way.
that's right.
Jesse, we're live on YouTube.
Live. All right. Great. All right, if everyone's ready to go. I'm going to call to order the Narragansett Town Council work session, February 8th, 2021, 7:01 p.m. This is a work session to review and discuss the 4 unrelated and the newly adopted 3 student ordinances, chapters 1017 and 1077 respectively. So little quick summary before we get started. So this is a workshop that was originally requested and put on the agenda by Councilor Bonanno. It did pass. It was approved 5-0, so everyone was in approval of holding this. So this is related to, or specifically focused on the ordinance that was passed last summer here in town, the 3 student ordinance. The last council had voted to hold off on enforcement of the ordinance until September 2021. And that was for the 3 student, and I believe also for the existing 4 unrelated ordinance. And I believe that, the intent here to just, since we have a new council, to get a better understanding of the direction that we're going in and when and how enforcement will take place. And to just kind of, because that's something that was never really put in place with the last council. There wasn't that mechanism of enforcement defined. So that's something that this council is going to need to grab the reins of and move forward with. So tonight we have a few hours to pick each other's brains, get a better idea of where we all stand.
2 hours
What did I say? A couple hours, right?
instead of few.
Oh, sorry, a couple hours. And we have a few guests as well. So we have Chief Corrigan here as a resource if we have any questions. We have our Assistant Solicitor, Andrew Berg, here for questions. I believe there's probably a few members of the planning board on tonight that we could call on if needed. We have invited a few local organizations and given them 5 minutes each to view their perspectives. So we have some neighborhood associations as well as a landlord association to give everyone kind of some equal time to express their opinions on the matter. The way this is going to work is we'll go around the council, have some council discussion. We will watch and listen to a few presentations from the local organizations. Then we'll go to public comment for a short period of time. And then we'll go back to the council for final thoughts. It's a workshop, so there's no voting. It's just a discussion and a chance for the public to listen and to chime in, time permitting, of course. We will limit comments to 3 minutes strictly. We have had public hearings on this for hours in the past. So again, this is really more of a council exercise, but also we do want to have some public input. So with that said, why don't we go around the council? We'll go alphabetically like we always do. So Councilor Bonanno, if you'd like to start it off, go ahead.
So first, I want to thank my colleagues for voting for the workshop. I appreciate that because I was personally involved in the ad hoc for the 4 unrelated. So this new ordinance that's on the books, the 3 student, is fairly new to me. And I know there was quick passage on it. So I just want to, understand and see if there's an appetite, if there is a compromise in any way when we're all done with this. If not, talking about how we could enforce it is obviously something that has been on my mind. We've had a lot of communications on this. I know the last council did as well on the 3 students. So I'm anxious to hear from the groups and hear from the council and see if there's an appetite to compromise in some way. And if not, what the enforcement would look like, what it will cost, when it would happen. So I look forward to hearing the presentations and the views of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Eva, do you have any initial thoughts or comments or questions?
Yeah, so I agree with Susan's thoughts, and my thoughts are always we did have ordinances on the books. My issue is with enforcement, so I think that's should be a primary focus. But I'm been listening to everybody, both sides. I always said whether it's 3 students or 4 students, if the enforcement factor isn't in place, then it's not really going to make a difference. So those are just my initial thoughts, and I'm going to be listening to everybody.
Eva? Deb, any thoughts from you?
A few. I agree with what Susan and Eva just said. I also just think that this issue is complicated, and I think that we heard an enormous amount of feedback from people over the weekend. I know I spent a large portion of my weekend reading what people had to say and trying to absorb that in an effort to make sure that I understood all the different parts to this issue, because there are different parts to this issue. I think we have to consider a lot of different things. A lot of folks just raised up issues about noise, and I think this is a much more complicated issue than noise, and we need to consider that as well. But enforcement does become the issue that we have to make sure that makes sense, because whatever we decide, if we can't enforce it, it won't matter. So we have to make sure that we deal with that issue as well.
Thanks, Deb.
Mhm.
Mr. Murray?
Yes. Yeah, this issue's been kicking around the table here for quite some time. Yeah, they pushed through the 3 student because of the Providence decision. And so now we have a 3 student, 4 unrelated. Ever and I has talked to Daniel Graney over there at URI Affairs, student affairs, and I think URI has got a new commitment here for enforcement of student behavior, off-campus behavior. I think we can work with that. He's here tonight, actually. Maybe we can get him to speak at some point. Also, I think it's important that all sides have a seat at the table, but it's about enforcement and accountability of the student. And I think the landlords will enjoy that. And I could move to a 4 student, 4 unrelated policy, provided that we do have a mechanism of accountability and enforcement. Certainly, I think everybody will benefit. And I think one of the main things that it comes back to me as a real estate professional is maybe the town should have a lease, a town student lease, to where that is, the basis of our enforcement mechanism. So that's where I'm going with this. So we'll just see what other people have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Okay. Yeah, we talked about this for a long time last year. The planning board had 2 meetings on it, and they had to have the 2 meetings because there was so much public comment. And the thing that we've all learned about Zoom is that it has made geography irrelevant when it comes to town council meetings, because anybody could call in from anywhere. So you get a lot of commentary from people that aren't necessarily residents, who do have a stake in the town, but it's easy access when it comes to the Zoom meeting. So I'm a little bit off track, but we've talked about this for a while. But I think there's 2 sides to this issue. And this is where, for me, it becomes, sometimes I feel like I'm in a completely different mind state than the discussion that's happening. So there's the behavior side, which is the noise issues, nuisance issues, that sort of thing, partying. And then there is the other side, which is can anybody afford to live in Narragansett year round anymore? And that is the side effect of college rentals. So that's kind of the other side of it. That's the side I'm more focused on. I'm not looking at this as a way to resolve nuisance issues, because if that was it, you would just put a lot of money towards enforcement and you could do it. And also, putting 3 or 4 students in a house as opposed to 6, is that really going to cut down on parties? Probably not. Because if you have, when I was in college, it didn't matter. If I was in a 3-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment or a 5-bedroom apartment, we were still wanted to have parties because we were in college. So I really am looking at this as an affordable housing issue. That's my perspective on it. And when we get the emails that come through, and we got a lot of emails in a short period of time, and this actually dwarfed the amount of emails we got last year. So for the newer council members, we got maybe 3 times this amount of emails. But when they come through, you almost know exactly what they're going to say. For instance, when it is when it's a rental owner, it always starts the same way. And before I get too much into this, I'm not villainizing or blaming anybody here. I don't think anyone is bad or anyone's good. It's just with the rules that we have in town right now, it has formed this situation, because Narragansett is very appealing and a lot of people want to be here, and it's set up in a way that you could do that and have somebody else pay your mortgage, and then you can eventually retire here. But all the emails start the same way. So it's always, we own property at this address. And then immediately that this is someone who doesn't live in Narragansett and they're the owner of the property and they don't want this ordinance, and it makes sense. Why would you? But they never start with we live at. The ones that start with we live at are the ones who want us to keep the 3-student ordinance. And that's kind of the defining factor in these emails. I got a couple emails, we all got them, that really stood out to me. One of them, and I'm not going to obviously give out names or anything like that, but we did get an email from some property owners that live in the next town over. They own 4 houses in the South End, and those 4 houses have 28 bedrooms in them. So 6.5 bedrooms per house on average. And they've been so successful owning and renting these houses to college students over the last 20 years that they built a new 8-bedroom house last year, because it's been such a great business. And as I was reading this email, it just became so clear that these are business owners that are running a business in Narragansett and targeting Narragansett as the place they want to run their business, because they live in South Kingstown, but they're not doing it there. They're doing it in Narragansett. Because if you buy a house in Narragansett, you're guaranteed to have people that are going to rent it, college kids that are going to rent it. So that email was sent, I think, in a way to try to persuade us to roll back the ordinance. But when I read it, it really magnifies the problem that we've had over the last couple of decades in town. Another thing that I noticed in the emails was almost, not 100%, but very consistently, it was talking about their plans for the house. So this is for, a property owner asking us to rethink this ordinance. I'll give a couple of quotes, just sentences from these emails. So our intention is to live in Narragansett full time when we retire. Narragansett has become our true home away from home and our eventual retirement location. I was able to fulfill this dream with the help of the URI student school year rentals and summer rentals. I hope to rent for a few years, pay down the mortgage, and then retire in Narragansett. And I can list these out. I have another 5 or 6 that say the same thing. And it's not, I think that's great that people want to retire here, but that is all that's happening. So you're going to get you're gonna have a town that's literally retirement town or college kids, college rentals. So that's it. It's not diverse. It's not balanced. Neither of those groups. There's nothing wrong with either of those groups, but that's, you want diversity. You don't want too much of anything. And without, doing something like this ordinance that the last town council decided to move forward with, this will just continue. I spent 45 minutes with the last council when we had our public hearing saying the same exact thing. But I just want to reiterate that this is being done to change the culture of what Narragansett is, and and the perception of what Narragansett is for people that are for out-of-towners. When people think of Narragansett now, they think of summer and college rentals, and a lot of people want to get in on that, and it's an easy investment. And I don't think any amount of smaller tweaks to zoning, I don't think that any affordable housing initiatives are going to fix this problem. I think that they can improve things slightly, but the housing stock is so small here, it's so limited. There's no land to develop. So ADUs, incentivizing affordable housing, that kind of stuff we should do, but that is just part of the equation, I think. It's not going to solve the problem. So we'll take some public comment. We'll hear from others, but we'll come back to the council, for some additional thoughts. Let's see. So Dan, in terms of presentations, let's go ahead and start with Mr. Zanfrillo. He is representing his neighborhood association, and I know he has sent over a presentation.
Good evening, council.
Hi, Paul. If you could, we'd like to keep these to like 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, talking more doesn't persuade more, so you got it.
Okay, thanks.
Paul, yours the one that's named Promise, correct?
Yes, promise.
Second. Should be able to see it now.
I can see it. Yep.
You can see it, Dan.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So Jesse, just kind of building on what you said, I want to talk about how houses are sold and what it looks like to somebody coming into Narragansett. And really, what if somebody told you you could make 16% a year as a safe investment on your house, guaranteed 100%. I mean, URI's not going anywhere, is it? And imagine that URI students can buy you a beach house in beautiful Narragansett and you get 16% back on your money. So I know that people are skeptical saying, Paul, where did you come up with these numbers? Well, I'm going to show you. If we just go to the next slide, please. So here's the core issue, and I think Jesse capped it up perfectly. Investors are being promised insane returns and a beautiful investment, and nothing has stopped them in the last 30 years. There's been no zoning, there's been no enforcement, and there's been a culture of entitlement to these investors that, they can come in here. And what happens also is that when you start to get some pushback, it's almost like they want to bail out like those hedge funds did with GameStop, right? They're coming in here as businesses, and the town, it's not the town's job to guarantee an income or a certain set of business conditions. Next slide, please. So I just want to take, this is from a listing. This is from a listing right off of MLS. And as you can see, they almost, just like Jesse talked about those emails all reading the same, these read the same as well. And it's like with a great rental history, you can let the URI students pay for it. That's right. I mean, this is right from the listing. You can get a beautiful house by the beach and someone buys it for you. Next slide, please. So I went on Narragansett Properties website, and I've not seen this in any other town. So if you click, and I put the URL there as a reference if folks want to see it themselves. When you go to I want to buy a house, they talk about their 250 clients and 2,100 rental homes, 800 URI students, and it says, hey, by the way, here's an investment property calculator. And so I went through the calculator so you can see the kind of money that people are being promised. If we could go to the next slide, please. And this is the advice. So this is the text. And again, you can go to Narragansett Properties and get this, right? And these are the instructions for the calculator. They tell you to, you're going to get 95 to 98% of the asking price. And this was a good way to do your return on investment. They said, make sure that you tack on a management fee of 12%. Now, keep in mind that Narragansett Properties manages over 250 properties. And they also talked about that on June 30th on Channel 12. So keep that in the back of your head for just a second, because it shows you how much money there is in this. It's insane. Next slide, please. So here's a listing of 7 Palm Ave. It's currently listing for $749,000, 6 bedrooms, 2 baths. Next slide, please. And again, part of the listing details include academic leases in place through May. So it's being sold as a rental. It says, by the way, your first year is almost guaranteed. Next slide, please. So this is how the calculator works on Narragansett Properties website. So we put in the price of the house, the monthly taxes, the rent per bedroom. The number I used, the $725 that I used, was right in the middle of what they suggest. And then there's a $725 price per week in the summer as well. And calculates the down payment, the monthly mortgage payments. And if you slide down just a little further, you'll see the, it got cut off, but it's about $10,000 for the management fee. We'll go to the next slide, please. So if you look, if somebody's got a down payment of $187,000, they're going to make $30,000 a year. So remember, this was advertised as having the whole academic lease in place for the next year. So what the sellers are telling you is that your first year is already, the mortgage is already taken care of for you. Next slide, please. And so just to get back to Narragansett Properties, I did a calculation. If the 250 properties they have are about 4 bedrooms, then they're making about $2 million a year. That one real estate agent management company is making around $2 million a year in fees. So there's so much money, there's no friction. And, I heard a lot of talk about compromise. I would humbly submit to the council that these ordinances are the compromise. The whole town is about to turn into a dorm and to be commercial. And I want to finish by saying this. I agree with this quote by a town councilor who said rather recently, the residents of this town have been crying out for 30 years. It's a shame that the past and the present town council members don't have the guts to stand up to the full-time residents of this town. I just don't understand why this town keeps catering to everyone except full-time residents. And Mr. Murray, I absolutely agree with you. We don't agree on very much, but I absolutely agree with you. So please, I would ask you to please keep these ordinances that are in place. and let's change the whole fabric of Narragansett. Let's change it to a family-friendly town that families can afford to move into. Mr. President, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Paul.
Council.
All right. Next, let's go to the Narragansett 2100 group. I believe it should be Joe Lembo. Dan, are you able to see him?
Yeah, just looking now. He doesn't have his hand up.
All right, Joe, if you're on, put up your hand so we can identify you and move you over to the panel. Oh, there you are. You see him at the bottom?
Yep, got it.
All right, can you hear me now, Dan?
Yes.
All right, and you know I have a couple of screen shares as well, correct? So
That is correct. I just want to make sure we got them in the right order.
yeah, I tried to make it in the file. There's slide 1 and then slide 2, 3, and 4. When we get to it, just scroll those while I speak so I can stay on time.
Yeah, just let me know when you're going to change the slides because I don't have the paragraphs in front of me.
Oh, okay. All right, then I'll add that into this. All right. Jesse, should I just jump in?
As soon as Dan shares the screen, you could go ahead.
Yeah, Dan, if you want to put slide 1 up, just put that up. There we go. All right. Not that one, the next one, Dan. Thank you. All right, well, good evening, Council, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Joe Lembo, 20 Black Alder Trail, and I'm representing Narragansett 2100, a nonprofit corporation with members that include Narragansett landlords and Narragansett property managers, and we are all volunteers. Our mission is to promote improved communications and community relations among Narragansett landlords, tenants, and the neighboring public to maintain and improve the quality of life in our town. We've provided additional information and exhibits to the council and town manager regarding it, which includes statistics provided by the Narragansett Police Department. These show a dramatic decrease in offenses and violations over the past 6 years, as you can see in this first graph. Our materials include also a report by Ed Pimentel, an independent consultant and experienced land use planner, who concludes in his report that the ordinance is not consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. This conclusion was unanimously supported by the planning board, who rejected the ordinance in a 5-0 vote. Narragansett 2100 strongly agrees with the planning board decision to oppose the 3-student limit ordinance. Limiting the number of students who can live in a house will not make partygoers drink less or respect their neighbors more. Just as Jesse said tonight, many people learn of parties, they migrate to a party address from outside of town. So the number of people living in a particular house really has no bearing on how many outsiders show up and create a nuisance. But when limits are placed on the number of students living in one house, do we realize that more rental housing will develop to meet the demand? As someone just said, URI isn't going anywhere. And in this sense, the ordinance becomes counterproductive. Now, opponents may argue, as they have, that the quality of life has deteriorated over the past few years. However, the data provided to us by the Narragansett Police Department does not support that premise. To the contrary, as you're seeing the graph again, the quality of life has significantly improved over the past 6 years. And Dan, if we can go to the next 3 slides and just briefly go through them. Year to date, since 2016, nuisance police reports have decreased 73%. The number of orange stickers issued have decreased 73%. Next slide. And in looking at just numbers in Eastwood Look, which contains several rental properties, we have reduced 55% the nuisance reports, and 63% of stickers. The total number of nuisance reports last year was just 65, which is only 2.4% of the total rental properties in Narragansett. The number of stickers, as you can see in this final slide, was just 39 or 1.4% of all rentals. Now, how were these results achieved? It wasn't by ordinances, but rather by the increased enforcement and education since 2014, really. Narragansett 2100 has established positive relationships and worked together with the landlords, the Narragansett Police Department, URI administrators, URI Student Senate, URI fraternity and sorority leaders, Narragansett town officials, and Narragansett property managers. Narragansett 2100 has been commended for their efforts by the Narragansett Chief of Police repeatedly. We've provided the council with the education materials that we supply to students and landlords every fall, which highlight ordinances, required behavior. We've even included a Hello Neighbor card, which encourages students to meet their neighbors and exchange phone numbers and be a good resident. Narragansett 2100 also established a URI Narragansett Student Advisory Council, which encourages students to participate and be part of the solution. So the facts also show landlords are a significant economic force utilizing local businesses. Winter rentals provide a way for many businesses to survive during the non-tourist summer season. Summer renters provide millions of dollars for the income for local businesses in the town. Landlords also pay their share of property taxes without burdening the school system, which is the town's biggest expense. The reality is that landlords and renters add to the diverse makeup of our town. The town should work to remove any ordinance that limits the number of people renting homes in Narragansett. Many owners have made substantial investments in their properties based on the knowledge that they would generate revenue during the year. This is a lifetime financial decision, and this type of ordinance will result in significant long-term financial harm to them as well as to the town. Landlords have received permits from the town to build multi-bedroom homes or expand existing homes. In many cases, owners made a significant investment to bring their homes up to code. The town knew that these homes would be rentals. Any ordinance limiting renters severely impacts the property rights of an owner. These owners should not be punished for the following rules or for following their own rules of the town. We strongly oppose this ordinance and encourage the council to revoke this unfair 3 college student ordinance. We are anxious to work closely with the council to implement our enforcement and education recommendations and work to unite a divided Narragansett for a continued trend of improving the quality of life in our town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Dan, do we have the NPR representative on?
What's their name?
Sorry, NPRA. It would be Harry Schofield.
Yep.
Harry, if you're on, raise your hand. I don't know if he's under a different name or not.
Oh, yeah.
Joe, can you let me mute you here.
I got him.
All right, so
See Harry Schofield.
you don't see him, okay. Why don't we, the last person who got in touch with us ahead of time to speak or to present was from an organization was Steve Ferrandy from Eastwood Look Home Owners Association. So I think that's probably the Steve that's in the list.
I think you're right.
Hello?
Hi, Steve. You're on. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. Appreciate the time. Steve Ferrandy, 44 Sylvan Road. Um, Thanks for the time. And, this has been a very long road for the neighborhoods. And it's really something simple that's happening here. Our single-family neighborhoods have been really taking a back seat and a step back for the last 25 to 30 years. Everything that's been tried hasn't worked. We haven't had support from past councils before. Some have asked to look, give us some support, some haven't. But the critical thing is that what we're seeing today at the point we're at is not a normality. This has been a one-sided road for quite a long time, for the last 25 years. So as far as a compromise, I mean, I can understand everybody likes to talk about this compromise, but these neighborhoods have degraded so far down that, Eastwood Look really doesn't have a whole lot of full-time people left in it. So maybe some of the reasons I think for the so-called reduction in some of these incidences, well, first of all, you have to take the last year of COVID right off because, everybody's basically been on a lockdown. This is about an assault on the properties. There's not many families here. A lot of the families we had have moved out. And because we haven't had just about any limits on this, we've got an intense use. We've got single-family neighborhoods that weren't designed to have all this traffic, all this extra people, all the extra bedrooms. I realize it's easy to get an extra bedroom. You need a 10x7 permit, 10x7 room with an egress window. Eastwood Look has added all kinds, maybe 40 or 50 in the last couple of years. So that's an equivalent to maybe 15 more houses in this town without moving, without even building a new property. The typical thing is, here's one that happened last year. Someone buys an Eastwood Look for $619,000. It's a 3-bedroom house. There was a family there. First thing that happens is they put 3 more bedrooms in. It becomes a 6-bedroom, strictly rental all the time. And that's it. It's actually changing fabrics of neighborhoods. So it's more about the overcrowding. It's more about, it's so easy to do this here. It's more about our sewer use, our overtaxing some of the resources we have. So, we just haven't really been designed to have all of this extra intense use. So, and as far as the enforcement goes, you have a newly vetted ordinance from Providence, right off a Supreme Court rule, 3 students. I don't think you need any unthinkable or unmakeable enforcement mechanism. Basically, if you put the enforcements in place, it becomes a town law that you're supposed to rent to 3 college students. On the rental registration form, you can look at the lease. There's paperwork for that. So they can look at the lease, find out if it's a student, and that's it. It's just going to bring a little bit more stability into the town. So it's not just about the incidents. Like I said, we have a lot of areas, and there's a lot of people that want to talk about all these neighborhoods, but they wouldn't think of living in one of these neighborhoods. I don't know where all the council lives now, and but there's a lot of people that wouldn't even want to live in these neighborhoods anymore. So please, this is a neighborhood-friendly ordinance, town neighborhood-friendly ordinance. If you don't want this, then I don't think anybody could really be for the neighborhoods in this town, and a little bit more civility. And the residents need this. The residents have been asking for this for a long time. So I would say, it's not going to be that difficult to enforce. Just put it in there. Anybody that goes over the amount is there. You're going to get a lot of self-enforcement. It's just like the speed sign on a highway. It's only 45 miles an hour on Point Judith Road, so you don't go 70. Are there people that are going to go 70? Yes. Most of the people are going to stay within the law. So I think the enforcement is a red herring, and it's got to be perfect. It's got to be this. It's going to cost us too much money. It's not that way. Look at the other ordinances that are in town. Just put it in play, and I think you owe this to the residents of this town, and also for the future of this town. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. So it looks like Harry's on. I know he has a presentation he sent over. After he goes, we'll go to the general public, and we'll take some comment that way. So Dan, if you could
Okay.
allow Harry. to go. And I think you have his slides.
Can you hear me, Jesse?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, well, thank you all on behalf of NPRA for this opportunity. And I just want to reinforce, Paul's on Philo's comments that Jesse, you're right, picking up on it. Enforcement is the key. You've all said that. This is about how to turn this town around a bit in favor of, families. And so with that, whenever Dan gets the slides up, we can go forth. But
Harry, what's the name of your file that you sent?
the name of the file, well, you got me there. It's
I got over a dozen of them today, so I should make sure we get the right one.
it should be NPRA something.
Don't have it.
Peer resident. Oh, I know I sent it. Wait a minute, I'll look it up, Jesse. Let me just go to my file system. I mean,
Harry, the file you just sent me, is that it?
hold on a minute. I'm going to give it to you.
No, that was the letter that I meant to send you earlier.
Okay.
NPRA, February 8th, zoning recommendations.
Okay. Oh, yep. Okay, hang on.
You have it?
Yes, just 1 second. Dan, I'm forwarding it to you, and
Okay.
it's an attachment embedded within the email to be downloaded.
Okay.
You know, while they're doing that, I certainly agree with, Paul gave an excellent description of the economics associated with the rental business in Narragansett. It's a $40-50 million a year business. And it's a perfect storm for investors. It's been a perfect storm since the 94 DeStefano v. Staxton decision by Steve Fortunato, a decision that the Rhode Island Supreme Court said was poor legal form this past May when they decided against, when they decided in favor of the Providence 3 students ordinance. So, Paul is right about that. And as Jesse
Harry,
said,
I want to try to stick to just the presentation, only because we're limiting time when the public speaks. So,
okay. All right, I'm just waiting for the slides.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it downloaded now. This file was uploaded by the sender using.
Harry, you don't like the awkward silence?
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
Touche.
Right, I got it, Harry.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so go to slide 2, Dan. So slide 2 is just a history of these 2 ordinances, the original 4 unrelateds, which was summarily shot down because of this DeStefano decision. And in May of last year, the Supreme Court decision made it clear that both Narragansett ordinances, the no more than 4 and the no more than 3 students per single family unit, are both legal and enforceable. That's the point of this slide, so you can read the details. So you can move on, Dan. So this next slide, slide 2, is a summary of the Horsley-Witten housing data that pulled together on behalf of the town in preparation for the 2017 comprehensive plan. So this is data 5 years old, and it shows 2,314 seasonal rentals. Can you slide the slide up a little bit, Dan? Just slide it up. And the June 2020 rental registration list that I got a hold of said there were 2,537 properties. Many people think this underestimates them by a couple of hundred properties, but even this is nearly a 10% 5-year increase. So 10% increase in rentals every 5 years. This approaches 40% over 20 years. At this rate, in 20 years, the town will be 2/3 rentals. Go ahead, Dan. So the point here is that that rate is unsustainable, and it is in direct conflict with the comprehensive plan, notwithstanding the fact that the planning board decided against the 3 students. That unchecked level of growth is not compliant with the plan. And this business that Joe Limbo just presented about how good everyone is since 2016. The reason for those improvements since 2016 is simply because we were putting the 4 unrelated ordinance in place. The fear of that ordinance improved their performance, and that tells you all you need to know about enforcement. The fact is, orange stickers are just the tip of the iceberg, and residents have been forced to deal with issues with students themselves. It's been an unwarranted and undeserved burden. Police are called only as a last resort, except for parking tickets. And by the way, when you wake a resident up at night because of late night activity, that damage is irreversible. And over those 5 years, it's just gotten worse. Eastwood Look, Bonnet, Village of Point Judith, Briggs Farm are all overwhelmed with these problems. And by the way, a 3 student per household limit, even if there's only 2,500 properties, that's 7,500 students living in town. That's 50% of URI. There's plenty of winter business left, so don't worry about that. But just remember that homes sold to families represent, really a long-term social and economic commitment to Narragansett. It's not transient. And by the way, these out-of-town investors, yeah, they bought the houses, they want retirements, but if they built them up and added bedrooms such that they can only afford them by renting to more than 4, then they're violating the 4 unrelated ordinance, and they made risky decisions. It's not up to the town to protect people's investments. As Paul clearly pointed out, landlords routinely take 40 to 70K per year out of rental properties, money that mostly leaves the town. They pay the same real estate taxes as residents on the current rates, which is something else we should be addressing, and burden the abutting neighbors as described above. So you have to ask yourself, is that fair to residents? Go ahead, Dan. Thank you. Some more data points. Zoning enforcement. People say, well, you can't enforce these ordinances. Well, of course you can. And Appendix A3 has some detailed recommendations we put forth. But just, to summarize them, state the ordinances, state the number of bedrooms and driveway spaces that are legal, verify the property is mortgaged and insured as a rental, require annual inspections, impose perjury and stiff penalties for misrepresentations and more than 3 serious violations per year. I submitted to you in Appendix A1 what Lincoln, New Hampshire just implemented as short-term rental rules with teeth, and we have property there. So, the one other thing I want to address here is that this business of grandfathering that has come up is promoted by many landlords. That should never be allowed. That's a disaster. That would cripple the future governance and ordinance enforcement of this town. Again, the point here is that any grandfathering of rental properties amounts to selling Narragansett residents down the river on behalf of out-of-town money. Landlords who added bedrooms and dorm spaces did so at their own risk. It's not the town's responsibility to support them. Go ahead, Dan. I don't need to speak to this. This is just what uncontrolled rental neighborhoods look like. You're all familiar with it. Go ahead, Dan. So on the 22nd of January, Ron Gilchrist of Eastwood Look emailed you, the town council, a long email, and he said, quote, if you step out your front door and look to the right, left, front, and back of your property and do not see a rental, you have no business reducing or eliminating these rules. These rules have been 25 years in the making. And Ron Gilchrist is right. And Eastwood Look has borne the brunt of these burdens, but it's growing all over town now, and including the north end. This year, we had severe water shortages. Now we're told we have water quality problems. Many areas are still not sewered. Many times the sewer system's overloaded. And anytime you see a raised ranch for sale that advertises sleeping 6, it was built for 3 bedrooms. So please, all of you on the council, ask yourself, isn't 7,500 students living in Narragansett enough? 50% of the entire university? And how many of your homes have parking for more than 4 cars? How many of you would want to endure the problems of these neighborhoods? Eastwood Look, Bonnet, Village of Point Judith, Spriggs Farm, many other neighborhoods, and there's, many here in the pier as well. Patrick Murray said on January 4th, he cares about 02882 zip code people. Well, you know what? Now's the time to stand up and prove it. So in summary, if you could reduce it, go to the next one there, Dan, I'd appreciate it. Again, we know 1/3 of the properties have been rentals. This ratio is growing steadily. 10% per year, per 5 years. It's just unsustainable. It's unsustainable. The school population steadily shrinks. And this ultimately threatens the future livability of the town. So these ordinances are not unreasonable. Please support them. And you're all right that the bottom line is enforcement. And we've given you in Appendix A3 some reasonable suggestions as to how to put a form together that puts these landlords on the hook, tell the truth, live by the rules. Other than that, they face stiff penalties. And if you do that, these rules will enforce themselves. And they're not unfair to landlords, okay? They give family home buyers more incentive to move in. We need families. Families, again, make a commitment to the town. And they'll ensure tax-paying residents, the people that elected you, the quality of life they deserve. And as many of the emails you've gotten have said, we've been waiting for this for 25 years. These are easily enforceable rules with reasonable and effective registration processes, and they don't infringe on any rights. They're not unreasonable. Many, many cities and towns across the country do this. This is not new stuff. So
All right,
again,
thank you, Harry.
25 years, I think it's time to fix the abuse on behalf of tax-paying residents. Please support these ordinances and do so. Thank you all.
Thanks, Harry. Okay. We are going to go to the public for a bit to take some general public comment. I do want to mention, just so it's clear, we also did reach out and invite URI to speak tonight as well, send over a presentation. We didn't get one, so they're definitely welcome to speak if anyone's on the Zoom. But I just wanted to make it clear that we were trying to get the perspective from both sides of the debate here. So Dan, who do we have first in the list?
First is Kyle LaBranch.
All right. Kyle, please state your full name and address, and if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, we appreciate it.
My name is Kyle LaBranch. I live in Cumberland, Rhode Island, and I'm the owner of 35 Joy Lane and 24 Ashton Lane in Narragansett. First of all, I just want to thank all of you for the time and energy that you dedicate to the town. As I have expressed to all of you in email correspondences, my wife and I are the owners of 2 homes in Narragansett, 1 5 and 1 6 bedroom. My wife and I are not millionaire out-of-state investors. We are both born and raised Rhode Islanders. We love Narragansett, and we are regulars at Coffee and Bagel Connection, Brickley's, and Chair 5 on Town Beach. We've invested in a town that we love, and we have always pulled proper permits and had responsible and respectable tenants. As you can imagine, a 3 or even 4 student ordinance would be devastating for us financially. Being penalized when we've done nothing wrong is frustrating enough, but that is compounded further by the knowledge that the damaging ordinance that we debate tonight is not going to solve the issues that are upsetting our residents in regards to behavior, as Congressman Pugh explained earlier tonight. In further agreement with the council, I'd like to applaud all of you for the work that you've done in the past. The work of Councilwoman Buonanno and others on past town councils, for example, to educate and enforce the rules of the town have proven very successful, as you saw with the numbers earlier, and the number of incidents reducing drastically. I'd also like to thank Councilman Murray for his efforts to involve the university to come up with other policies and procedures to hold students accountable. As I've emphasized to each one of you in emails, no one is more interested in ensuring that the homes are occupied by responsible and respectable students than the people who own those homes. There are far more ways to address the behavior and concerns that have been expressed tonight. For example, if you want to address noise, raise the fine on noise ordinance violations. If you want to reduce unsafe driving, raise the cost of a speeding ticket. And of course, if parties are the problem, you can crack down on parties. Let's focus on ways that we can eliminate the poor behavior of a few bad students rather than focusing on eliminating their mere existence. As for the desire to bring in more families, I'm sure I don't have to tell town council members that increased school enrollment is a town budget killer. Retirees and students provide tax revenue without becoming a burden to a town budget. From a budget standpoint, they are ideal occupants. As town council members, I know you have very direct experience in understanding town budgets. Lowering property values should not be an objective of a town council, nor should enacting ordinances that will lower tax revenue and increase town expenses. I understand that passions are high, but as elected officials, I beg you to look past the emotions involved and focus on solutions that are financially beneficial to our town and fair to all the stakeholders in our community. Let's continue to address the problems directly and collaboratively, and not with ordinances that will have devastating financial effects not only on law-abiding landlords like myself, but on all elements of our town. As a final request, should you decide that an ordinance limiting our rights to rent the homes is necessary, I beg you to consider grandfathering in responsible owners like myself, who have done nothing but follow the rules, invest in our town, and love our town. Thank you as always for the time and energy that you dedicate to Narragansett.
Thank you, Kyle. Dan, I do want to give some of these organizations a chance to speak. So could you move over Jay Rumis? I believe he's with ACLU at URI.
Okay. Jay is up.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you for giving me time to speak and for holding this in the first place. So yes, we've been doing this for a little bit.
Just, real quick, could you just state your full name and address?
Yes, my name is Jay Rumis, and I live at 55 Orlando Drive.
All right.
Narragansett. Thank you. So I've heard a lot tonight. We say, well, this has been getting worse. There are many people coming in. The university has been here since 1892. Much of Narragansett's development, arguably, is because of the university. And so I think there's a lot of fear mongering where, if we don't stop this now, it's going to take over all the residential housing. That's just not what the data is showing. Lowering housing units, lowering the total number of available housing units will just lead to more housing being required to accommodate these students. Because now you're going to have 7,500 people that have to be put into 3-person per home units rather than 4-person per home units. And so I definitely think that the economics of this are not quite panning out. This is a perverse incentive. It's going to lead to people building more homes to accommodate the demand, more rental properties. And I would like to bring your attention to a statement. Homes RI is a statewide organization of 70 nonprofits that deal in housing and affordable housing issues. And they said in the statement they sent you, I don't know if it got there in time, but when the supply, quote, when the supply of housing is decreased through ordinances like these, the price of housing increases. The Narragansett Times said that this specific ordinance will take more than 25% of the housing off of the market, end quote. So these are people who spend their lives tackling affordable housing issues, and they say this kind of ordinance is exactly what leads to exacerbated home prices. So with that being said, when you have groups like the Planning Board, Homes RI, the state ACLU opposing this because they say it is not beneficial to the housing community, I think that should give everyone pause. But excuse me, but that's all I have to say. Thank you, and I encourage you to repeal or modify this ordinance because 3 people per home is way too harsh in our opinion. Thank you.
Jay, if you could ask to have that email resent, that'd be great. I had an issue personally opening the attachment. I don't know if the other council members did as well. So thanks. Dan, who do we have next?
Next is Stanley Wojciechowski.
Stanley, please state your full name and address.
Stan Wojciechowski, 1044 Boston Neck Road. I was considering this, and I kind of think that maybe history repeats itself. Both my grandparents left Poland, and I asked my grandmother one time, "Why did you leave your family and friends and never go back? How could you do that?" And she said, "Well," he said, "government officials. First, what they did, they saw crippled and useless individuals. and they got rid of those. Then they saw the gypsies, and they got rid of those. And I see that's what's really happening here. We really got to call these students and the summer rentals, summer people are like the gypsies. They're bad people. And government wants to get rid of them. So you start off by enacting laws that will get rid of these people, these bad people. And, you know, it does look like enforcement. Yes, enforcement. If there's noise and disturbing the peace, we already have something in place. That the police officers they already list them. They list them. All we need to do is increase the fine to 2,000 an event per person. 2,000. Get an executive order to go to 2,000, and you can justify that with a police cost recovery system. The cost of the police should be involved in the fine. So you got 2,000 per person. Then you have a record. That student or person has a permanent record. When he goes out to try and get a job, he's in trouble. When you get enough incentives, you can prevent any noise. You can prevent all that disturbing the peace. That can be done. It doesn't have to be done by trampling on rights, property rights. I'm going to have a government official bang on my door and want to know who's here, how do you belong here, get out of here. Does that sound like America? My property rights? I don't think so. And let me tell you, I have 46 years. We have never had a sticker, never had an issue. So it's just a matter of, yes, the landlords will do a better job, but the students now, all people, summer, and it's the summer, it's really driven by summer rentals. The summer drove all this. The summer was the key. The people say we have to fill them in the winter, so we put the students there. But the summer rentals. So you want me to write a letter to the editor of the Providence paper all the time saying we don't want summer rentals. We want no summer people here in Narragansett. Please don't come. Is that what we do? No. A government lease. I need a government lease when I have no problem. No. Affordable housing. We got no more lots to put affordable housing. No. We just need enforcement of what's going on out there. And that'll solve the problem. We don't need bigger and more government with our leases and our rentals. No, we got to fix the noise problem and disturbing the peace problem with existing list and existing fines. Thank you very much. Keep America the way it is, not like where my grandparents came from, that Poland company, that Poland place.
Can you mute this, please? Thank you. All right. Who do we have next, Dan?
Next is Robert Cahill Sr.
All right. Robert, please state your full name and address.
Robert B. Cahill, 9 Birch Street, Narragansett.
Go ahead.
I gotta say, I'm not as extreme as Mr. Stanley there, but I do kind of agree with some of his ideas, although a little bit radical. I mean, I've been listening to this. I don't have a scripted speech, as many have. All I'm going to tell you guys is I've been living down here since 1961. When I was about 4 years old, we started spending summers down here. In 1991, we decided to build a house. Only reason we decided to build it is because we knew that we could pay the mortgage, and actually we wouldn't have even gotten financed to build it if we couldn't show that the college student rentals would be able to allow us to finance the home. So we built it, and with the college rentals and some sporadic summer rentals, because the whole reason we wanted to build the house was, because we wanted to spend the summers here. I was able to pay it off, and now I've been a permanent resident here in Narragansett since 2001. I went to URI down here in the 70s. This has always been a college town. Like somebody else brought up, URI's been around since 1892. If it wasn't for University of Rhode Island, the town of Narragansett wouldn't be what the town of Narragansett is. I agree there's been some issues, but as 4 out of 5 of you guys have admitted to, if not 5 out of 5, is the problem is enforcement. You know, and I completely disagree with that guy with the fancy slideshow that, you know, about like grandfathering is a bad idea. My situation is approximately 4 years ago. I decided, because I'm basically on a limited income, I'm partially disabled, I decided to purchase a 4-bedroom home. It's only two doors up from where I live. I have to cut the grass. My wife and I go and clean the house between tenants during the summers with the summer rentals because we can't afford to pay somebody else to do it. We, you know, I emptied my savings account, my 401k, just to be able to come up with the down payment to buy the house so that the college rentals and the summer rentals would enable me to pay for the house. So hopefully, I took a 15-year mortgage. Hopefully in 15 years, because I'm 62, I got another 11 years on the mortgage. I'll be 72 years old. And I figured the mortgage is paid off. And now I have something that I can collect as retirement other than Social Security. Who the hell can live on $2,000 a month, Social Security?
Mr. Cahill, I'm going to have to cut you off just because you're past the 3.
Please.
Thank you, though.
Give me one more moment. I have an idea that the town council, I think, should consider. Why don't you change the rental registration fees to be per bedroom and forget about the 3 or the 4 student thing and use the extra hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s worth of income to hire more code enforcement people, more police officers to enforce the existing codes? Problem solved. And like that crazy guy Stanley said, you know, crack down on them. If you have a party, fine them $2,000 a person. They deserve it. They're the ones having the party. Why take it out on me? You're ruining my retirement dream. Okay, that's thank you very much for the extra time.
Thank you. Dan, who do we have next? We're going to go to 8:20 for public comment, and then we'll go back to the council.
Next is Lynn Morgan.
Lynn, please state your full name and address.
My name is Lynn Morgan, 7 Woodruff Street, Narragansett. Thank you first and foremost for your time to spend on the town council. I appreciate all of the presentations and applaud everyone's attempt to be as magnanimous as possible because it is a difficult issue. I would have to take a little offense when a gentleman said that the students of Narragansett Elementary, middle, high school are a burden on the community. That's a very sad statement. It's interesting that students of Narragansett are a burden, but URI students are not. That's a discussion for another day. I would have to say also, in my humble opinion, URI is laughing at us. They don't need to build more housing. Why would they have to when they have an annex in Narragansett, Rhode Island? It's also interesting that I never hear the landlords who appear and discuss tonight are to be applauded. They're good individuals. They have an ethic and a duty to do the right thing. What you don't hear from is the landlord who doesn't care. I also question that the number of incidents have decreased. You can do wonderful things with statistics and make it look better than it is. I have the Narragansett Police on speed dial simply because we had a party during a pandemic, during phase 1 of Gina Ramendo's edict, and they had a wonderful party. 100 kids, wonderful time. That's the day I woke up and said, the kids can't be held responsible because they are kids. But you know who has to be held responsible? The landlord. You want to run a business, make sure you know what you're doing. I would ask the town council to never consider negating this ordinance. Ordinances work. If you don't have rules and enforce them, why bother? We can do this, but you have to do the right thing. Man up, enforce, do the right thing. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Dan, who do we have next?
Next is Steve, I think.
Oh, well, Steve spoke already.
Okay.
If it's Steve for Randy. But we could check, maybe it's a different Steve. Anyone, Steve, you there?
Steve Ferrandi again. I didn't mean to speak twice, so
Okay. All right, we'll skip to the
that's
next.
fine.
Thank you.
I'll limit.
No
Okay,
problem.
thank you.
Dan, why don't we go to Melissa?
Melissa, you're up.
Please state your full name and address.
Hi, it's Dr. Melissa Jenkins. I live at 4 Bayberry Road in Narragansett. I've been listening to everybody's testimony tonight, and I want to bring up a couple of points that have not been mentioned yet, so I'll skip the ones that have already been said. But first and foremost, it is a discrimination issue when you start treating one group of people differently than another. So you're acting as if all college students are partying and causing problems, when in fact only a small percentage of them are. So you're stereotyping and discriminating against people who haven't done anything wrong. Most college students are well-behaved and productive members of our communities. So I would ask you not to discriminate against all students based on the behavior of a few students. Yes, there are a few problems, and as people have said, you deal with those problems, but you don't discriminate against all students. You treat everybody who behaves badly the same way. The other point that I want to bring up that nobody has mentioned in these fancy slideshows about how much landlords are raking it in is landlords are not raking it in from college students. Homes rent for about the same amount per month in the winter as they do per week in the summer, or even less than that. You know, the ratio of money that landlords are making on summer weekly rentals for vacationers versus monthly rentals to college students, you really have to consider that the landlords are not getting rich on college student rentals. College students can't afford it. So the winter rentals are not what's making money for landlords. I know I was a landlord before I lived in my home. We used to rent it weekly in the summer and monthly in the winter. And we made an awful lot more money in the summer, but it wasn't without a lot of work. You know, as the other gentleman said, who rents his home, he has to go in between tenants and clean them and pay for repairs and insurance and take care of that investment. So it's not a passive investment. Landlords are small business people. Most people do not have 28 bedroom units. They have one home. They're taking care of it, and it's a small business. The other thing that I want to tell you about is my neighbors. I actually live between two student rentals in Bonnet Shores. And both of them are very good neighbors, but on one side, I have people from Connecticut who are a teacher and a police officer who use their home themselves in the summer. They're able to afford it by renting to college students that defrays their expenses a little bit, but they primarily bought the home as an investment that they could also use to enjoy their summer vacations because they're public servants who work very hard all year long. And I will tell you that they have 3 kids and they are a lot louder than their college student tenants. Not that I mind, they're great neighbors. But you know, these so-called awful, evil, out-of-state people are very nice teachers and police officers and middle-class people who are just defraying a few expenses and creating a good summer experience for themselves. And they're very welcome members of our community. I don't know if you've considered the differences between the Providence ordinance.
We just got to move on. I want to get a couple more comments in before we're done. Thank you. All right. Dan, it looks like Michael Millen is next.
Correct.
All right. Mike, please state your full name and address.
Michael Millen Jr., 65 Tupelo Trail. I just wanted to bring up some other avenues that should be discussed to deal with many of the concerns leading to tonight's meeting. I think that we need strong legislation and enforcement that holds property owners accountable for disruptive tenants. We also need tax rates that deter turning Narragansett real estate into a cash cow for non-resident property owners, decentivize seasonal rentals, and use incentives to encourage owners to provide year-round rental lease opportunities for young professionals and new families that want to be a part of our community and make it better while retaining the identity of our town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. All right, we have a little bit more time. Who do we have next, Dan, that hasn't spoken yet?
Bob LaFoley.
All right. Bob, please state your full name and address, and if you could keep it to 3 minutes, we appreciate it.
Yes, my name is Bob LaFoley, and my address is 21 Ocean View Drive in Narragansett. I appreciate the opportunity tonight to speak. I want to make a note, I'm a full-time resident of Narragansett, and I'm also the owner of a rental property. I live my residence with my wife and my 2 children. And I've never had any complaints from neighbors or the need for police response concerning my 4-bedroom rental property. And I am opposed to the 3-student ordinance because it infringes on the property rights of residents and it specifically targets college students. As the 2100's presentation clearly shows, based upon police statistics, that there has been improvement, significant improvement during the past several years regarding complaints. That being said, I believe there's always room for improvement. I've listened carefully to the aggrieved residents and their complaints during previous meetings and planning board meetings. And I want to point out, there's already an existing town ordinance which addresses all of these complaints. Article 2, Section 46-31, titled Public Nuisance, states, "It shall be a public nuisance to conduct a gathering of 5 or more persons on any private property in a manner which constitutes a substantial disturbance of the quiet enjoyment of property or public property in a significant segment of a neighborhood, as a result of conduct constituting a violation of the law. An illustrative of such unlawful conduct is excessive noise of traffic, obstruction of public streets by crowds or vehicles, illegal parking, public drunkenness, public urination, the service of alcohol to minors, fights, disturbances of the peace, and litter." Further sections of this ordinance hold not only the property's occupants liable, but also hold the property owners liable in the form of fines and also the recovery of police and fire response costs associated with these incidents. Today, I had an opportunity to contact the municipal court. I wanted to find out historically what fines have been being imposed through these existing ordinances. Unfortunately, there was no public record available of what fines have been previously imposed. It's my belief the town council's time would be better served looking into what penalties are being imposed for these violations of the existing ordinances, and after evaluation, and if deemed necessary, increase the penalties for the existing ordinances to more appropriately act as a deterrent, rather than imposing new ordinances which do not directly address the issues at hand. Instead, they restrict the residents' property rights and unfairly target a segment of our community. I really appreciate the town's council's time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, so that's going to conclude our public comment portion of the evening. Heard a few different perspectives there. As a council, we have a pending date on when enforcement is, at this point, to go into effect, which is September. So, we need to, I think, be strong in our position and our direction. I'm going to go around again and see if anyone has any additional thoughts about enforcement, about 3 student versus 4 unrelated. Why don't we start with Susan?
So, I'm just gonna be probably repetitive, but over my long tenure on the council, we spent a lot of time in a lot of committees with a lot of people listening to a lot of perspectives. And at the end of all that, when you walk away with a little feeling of okay, and everybody I think got that, we had decided on 4 was going to be the number that worked, the 4 unrelated. So I was comfortable with that. I think over the 10 years, we put tons of ordinances, the response recovery, the open container. We've done a lot to improve the quality. We absolutely have more work to do. But I supported the 4. I have trouble with the 3 because I think it's just too limiting. And so, I obviously care about the enforcement and would like to talk about that piece, but I'm just wondering if there's any will to look at the 4 students. And so as an ordinance, as what I would say a compromise. I know people said we've been talking about this for 25 years, and we at one point had the 4 unrelated. The 3 came in very quick, very fast in 1 month without enforcement. And we've been left with a little bit of a dilemma because we've got 2 ordinances have never been enforced, and we have to work on that piece. So in spirit of, being thoughtful about the residents and the people that live in the community, obviously I've always considered that in the work that I've done over my long service on the town. And I do care about the quality of the neighborhoods, and I want people to have a good quality of life here. But I feel a little badly for some of these people that are in situations that they never anticipated being in. So I was hoping tonight, one of the things we could do at the workshop is sort of see where the council is, because I know a lot of the people in the community and they've shared their opinions, whether it's an email or in person or over the years. And I guess I'm looking for direction from my colleagues. Is everybody absolutely set on 3? Is there, an opportunity to look and sort of combine them and see if we can get at the student, for student, I'd be in favor of that. So I'm willing to continue to put the residents of this town first, because that's always been something that we've been committed to. We've done a lot of things around it. So in the spirit of, trying to help the community as well as the homeowners, and some of those people that own homes and rent them are residents of the town. And so I would just say to my colleagues, I'd be interested to hear where there's appetite to look at some enforcement, whether it's combining them or not.
Thank you, Susan. Eva, comments?
Yes. So I've really struggled with this one because I am for the full-time residents. My campaign, it was for the people, for the town. But there's also the part of property rights and just infringing on that. So I have listened to everybody. I've gotten phone calls. I've read every single one of the emails. I didn't respond to all of them today. I didn't have a chance, but I will. And these ordinances aren't new to towns. When I've done my research, a lot of college towns, pretty much many of them, have restrictions on number of students per house. And when I started looking at it, there are a lot that are 2. There's a lot that are 3. There's some 4. And, I think it's important that I do make a point that one of our ordinances need to be enforced. We have ordinances. It's unfortunate that we haven't been able to enforce them because of the rulings of, in the past. I've seen Narragansett change. I went to school, I graduated in 96, and I bought my house here in 98. And I had the opportunity for a really great job overseas, so I left a few months after I purchased my house. Really, it was a great opportunity. I'm glad I went there because that's where I met my amazing husband. But, I made a choice when I left that I wanted to rent to year round. I respect community. I love my neighborhood. I love where I live. And I wasn't in it to make the money. I just wanted to keep the community aspect of my neighborhood. So, I just feel we really need to look at enforcement now that we have the opportunity where these ordinances are constitutional, they're legal. My perspective when I campaigned was it's not going to make a difference whether it's 3 or 4 students in a house. I also did, for the party but it does make an impact if there's a 3-bedroom home, supposed 3-bedroom home ranch, and then all of a sudden you have 6 bedrooms there, and then you have 6 cars, and then you have students parking on the lawn, in the street. A few weeks ago, I actually drove around Eastwood Look. I wanted to see what it was like, and there were a lot of cars. My husband and I, we took a drive through Eastwood Look, and you could tell where the students were. And I love the students, believe me. I'm a student again. I love URI. There's nothing against students living in our community. I value them. I think we all should value them. They do, they do bring forth, they stimulate our economy. They're here. So I don't know. To me, we are looking to enforce an ordinance that's there's no question about that. Do I feel it could go to 4 students? Yes, I've always felt that. But I do care about our community. I care about our full-time residents. And I also, I know the nuisances are going down, but the nuisances don't really relate to quality of life necessarily. Like, you can't equate less nuisances to quality of life. So again, I'm open. I think that, again, we have the opportunity now to enforce ordinances, and we just have to make sure that we do that. And I'm sure, and I know that URI has built more housing. They built an apartment style building for 500. Patrick and I scheduled a call with Dan Graney this last Wednesday. So we were able to have a conversation at URI. I mean, they don't know if they're going to be building more housing. Also, we have to think, who knows what the future of higher education is going to be with the pandemic hitting and all online learning. We don't know if it's going to be a lot of in-person. There's a lot of variables here. So those are just some of the points I was going to make, and I'm sure Patrick will chime in as well about some of the things that we discussed with URI. Thank you.
Ms. Eva. Deb, any comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few. First of all, I want to say that I agreed with Jesse on the issue of housing availability for people who want to live year round in Narragansett. I have some, I've listened to a lot. I mean, I've read a lot. I haven't listened to as much, but I've read a lot. I've read every single email, the same as Eva has. I responded to as many as I could. And I think that I really don't think this is a huge issue about noise and nuisance, at least certainly not as much as it was in the past. But that's not really the point. The point is about, how to manage quality of life with several disparate groups of people in the same basic location. So there are issues, and I'm not sure that enforcement is the only solution. I think we have an issue with houses that are too big for where they are, both in terms of the size of their lots, in terms of the number of bedrooms, in terms of how they impact the community. So that's an issue. We have issues with natural resources here in Narragansett. We just spent how many hours last week on the issue of water. And, the more people we have here, the more difficult it is to manage the water situation and the sewer situation, as I think somebody mentioned earlier as well. So that's an issue. I have a concern with the fact that there are a lot of commercial ventures existing in residential zones, and I'm not as up on the precise comprehension of zoning issues, but it's my understanding that, there, like the R40 zone, the residential zone, we have these, what they call them single family houses, but they're housing 8 bedrooms worth of people. None of them are related to each other. So there's a lot of parts to this that I think we have to consider. And I know that this workshop is essentially for talking about 3 or 4. And I've said this from the beginning. When I ran for office, I talked about the fact that I think this is a very complicated issue. I'm not sure what the difference is between 3 and 4. We did see a document today from Wayne Pimentel about how many rental properties there are and what number of presumed students can live in those properties. And about 50% were between 1 and 4. bedrooms, basically, or 1 in 4 people who could live in them. So, that's not a bad issue. But one other issue that I have that I'm just not sure about, and maybe somebody can explain this to me, is why it is that 8,000 students out of I think it's a population of about 16,000, Eva, you might know that number, I don't know, at URI are in Narragansett. There is housing on campus, and I don't know the exact number of rooms on campus, but it's got to be, probably around 8,000 or maybe even 7,000. So why, URI is located in South Kingstown. It's near North Kingstown. It's near Exeter, and it's actually the farthest out spot is Narragansett. Why aren't more students living in the other towns if they're living off campus? And I don't know the answer to that, so maybe somebody can help me with that. Anybody? Or is it just because Narragansett is a community that's always had seasonal rentals? And that's what I remember when I was a child, and growing up and I didn't go to URI, but I have several siblings who did, and they did live in Narragansett. And at the time, the way that it was people had summer cottages, and they'd put, a heater in their house, and then they rent to students in the winter. And those were cottages. They were 1, 2, and 3 bedroom houses, not 8-bedroom dormitories. So, that's how it started. And the growth has been, historically amazing, I guess, in some ways, but it also has impact on, quality of life, and also on use of natural resources and lack of full-time residents. So, if we're just talking 3 and 4, I could probably, I don't think 4 is a terrible number, and it makes some sense in terms of the total number of units, bedrooms in units in this town. But I think we also have to really consider some of these other issues when we're trying to decide how to solve this problem.
Thanks, Deb. Patrick, you are muted at the moment.
Hang on. Okay. All right. What did we learn tonight? Apparently, I got the quote of the year. Jesse's going to Congress, and I think we need a 4 unrelated gypsy rental policy. So that's what I found out tonight. But okay, seriously. On one side, you have the residents. All right. Eastwood Look is not coming back. It is a student community. It's not a family community. Those are the facts. It's unfortunate, but Rhode Island in a whole is expensive for a young family to live. Most Northeast communities, states are. So that's why people are moving south. Now, I'm okay with the 3 student now. Ever and I have been started talks with URI. First meeting went great. We're going to come up with some information. I think that will assist this conversation. And I think we can have all people sitting at the table to come up with a reasonable, enforceable, and accountable as students and landlords want accountability too. I think the 2100 group is doing a fantastic job managing their homes, being responsibility for their properties. There's some rogue, landlords that just don't care, and I've seen them firsthand. And what this industry, this rental summer winter industry, it does produce a lot of income for local families who have painters in the family, or carpenters, or who clean houses. Long-term local companies work in the rental industry. That's a fact. So, and Narragansett has always been a tourist, college, and family town. The numbers have been increasing in the rental demographics. I think going to a 3-student policy, we have more 3-bedroom homes than we have 4-bedroom homes. By going to the 3-student, I think you're pushing the rental units into those 3-bedroom homes, which are driving up the price and making it less affordable for families. So I think what we need is get with URI. I think we can come up with a comprehensive plan. And I'm not talking 10 years from now or 10 months from now. I'm talking less than 10 weeks. We can put something together. So sit tight and we're just gonna work this out. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. All right. So Patrick's right on a couple things. I do think 2100 Group, for what their mission is, they do a great job. I think they're professional, they're thorough, and they have made things better in general when it comes to noise and that sort and behavior. But it's not, again, I'll just go back to my original point. That is not the only story when it comes to these ordinances, because they're not going to do anything when it comes to the economics of the problem here in town. In fact, the better job they do for regulating behavior, the more they'll attract future landlords to want to own down here in Narragansett, because the process will just be cleaner. It'll be easier. You won't have to deal with the nuisances in your rental. So I don't know that them being a professional operation does anything to help young families move to town. So that's just one thing. I think that there are a few different types of rental property owners in town. We definitely have the local families who might live here and then own a rental, for additional income. That is one type. But then there's two other main types, I think. And that is the investor. That's pretty much a business owner. Their business is owning rentals and making money off of that. And I don't have any issue with them making as much money as they can, generally speaking. It's really not any of my business. The other type is the out-of-state person who is claiming a property in Narragansett now to then retire in 10 or 15 years. Again, really nothing wrong with that. That's a lot of people's dream, is to own a beach house and then retire there. However, you're putting your stakes down in that property now in advance with that guarantee, and it's just taking these properties off the market. If you're in your 20s and you live in Narragansett, or you were from Narragansett, the odds are that you will not be able to live and raise a family in Narragansett if you're that age. You're just not going to have the money to do it. And when you're maybe 50 now, you do have the money to buy that second property, claim it, rent it out for 10 years, and then move in. So it's a really unfortunate situation for people that want to live here year round, and for people that want to see this remain a thriving community. And when I say community, I'm talking about full-time residents, because the problem is that college kids, it's that you do want to go outside and have someone next door that lives there for years, that is your neighbor and your friend. And when you have people that are coming every year and leaving, you just don't have that community. In terms of the trends, Patrick, you said it's always been a rental community, and it has. And you said things have accelerated recently, and they have. So the rental registrations since 2008 have gone up 20%. So 12 years, 20% increase in registrations for rentals. And I went over this last year, but I know we have some new council members. For school enrollment in Narragansett, our elementary school enrollment has gone down 30% in 8 years. So that's 30% less kids in the elementary school because you don't have those young families in town. And then URI enrollment has gone up 36% in 14 years for the undergrad. So you combine those three things, and you can see how this is a very tough housing market to reverse these trends in any way, unless you do something, I think, like this. Deb made a good point about college students not having to live in Narragansett. The one thing we hear is that if you increase the demand by 25% by cutting down those houses, then you're gonna have to increase housing. But I disagree with that, because if you own a house in Narragansett now, the demand is already there. There's no reason to be holding off because you don't think there's demand, because it's there. So these houses aren't just going to spring up out of nowhere. There's really barely any empty land to build on, so it would have to be an existing house. And people could rent them out now if they wanted to. So like Deb said, if you have this demand, it's not this, you don't have this finite supply, because it's not just Narragansett. We have all these other towns that people can look to that are closer than Narragansett. They're not going to be on the beach. And then the other thing is, Deb, you had asked how this kind of happened, and it's because people want to have the summer house in Narragansett. So you could do the same thing in Richmond and get a rental, but you're not going to be by the beach. So you have that summer house and you have the guaranteed rental in the winter. And that's how this has happened. My position is, first of all, I am for compromise, generally speaking, and I think everyone's pretty reasonable in this council. We are not really that far off, because we all kind of support the concept of a student ordinance, and the question seems to be whether it's 3 or 4. I do think the 3 is going to be more effective if the goal is to free up housing inventory. And I think that because Patrick said that Eastwood Look was basically not going to be turned back into a family neighborhood again, and that may be the case. But because it is basically full of college rentals, now people that want to buy a house here to rent out are buying them in other neighborhoods. And a lot of those neighborhoods in the North End have 4-bedroom homes. So I think that's where people are looking to buy now, buy their summer house in those neighborhoods. And if you keep it at 4, the people are going to buy up all those 4-bedroom raised ranches and rent them out. So I think if you have it as a 3-student ordinance, it will remove a lot of those 4-bedroom homes from the market as rentals. Because if this is in place and you're looking to buy something next year, are you really gonna buy a 4-bedroom as a college rental knowing that you're breaking the law in that town? Some people will risk it, but I think most people do not want to put themselves in that situation, regardless of enforcement. I think you're gonna get a lot of self-compliance. So I would be for the 3, to continue the 3. It's already on the books. It's more, we basically would just say we're going to enforce it, and we're not passing any new ordinances. And then if we wanted to keep the 4 unrelated, that may be more related to summer rentals, to be honest, because it's a good point. The summer rentals are a huge issue as well. And I know one of the speakers said that that's where all the money's made, and that may be the case, but it's the college rental ability that enables you to rent in the summer, because you have it's academic seasonal rentals. If you were renting year round, you wouldn't be able to rent in the summer. So it's the combination of having that college student population, freeing the house up in June, then you rent it in the summer. So just circling back, my position is to keep the 3-student ordinance in place and enforce it. Whatever we decide, we'll work with the council to make sure it's as successful as possible. We enforce it. We don't want to get too hung up, in disagreements when it's between 3 or 4. But personally, I would like to stick with the 3. So that's where I'm at. All right. So does anyone want to talk about enforcement mechanisms before we go?
Yeah, I think we should spend a few minutes on, who is going to, is it going to be the building inspector's office? Are we going to, how is that all going to play out? Should they get together and start planning it and submit something to the council so we can look at it? I don't know.
So
We don't have any idea how any other town does something like this, right? I
But
mean,
Wayne might, so maybe they could do some research and present
yeah.
some of, some of the work that they think they could accomplish. We should at least be tasked with, getting to the next steps.
I can speak towards enforcement.
Oh,
Go ahead, Andy. Yep.
Once an ordinance on the books, it really comes down to the town manager to direct department heads in the enforcement of ordinances. It depends on what kind of ordinance it is. If it's for example, the noise ordinances or the the stickers and that type of thing, it comes down to the police department, sometimes working with the building inspectors. I think in this case, with these two ordinances that we're discussing today, it's going to come down to the building official. So we've already had the prior town council pass a resolution to start enforcing this thing in September. And as that date approaches, and in fact, we've had discussions already with the town manager and myself and department heads on how to approach the enforcement. So that's obviously you can weigh in with resolutions and provide input on the town council, their thoughts on the subject. But like any other ordinance, it's going to come down to the town manager and managing the resources of the town to address a problem when they come up.
So we could proceed as is, take no action at the council level. And then unless something we felt needed to be approved or if any issues were arising, we could direct the town manager to enforce it in a different way, right?
Well, if the town manager needs resources, additional resources, then the town manager would come to the town council to seek those resources.
Mhm.
It's a new territory. We haven't really been in a position for a while to exercise enforcement on these types of ordinances. Every time we've tried, we've been cut off by the municipal court based on Judge Fortunato's ruling, but now we kind of have a green light in that respect.
Andy, could you just speak briefly on the 3 student ordinance and the 4 unrelated in terms of legality? You believe they're both legal based on the Providence ruling?
Yes, I think, well, the constitutionality for sure on the student ordinance, we modeled it after it. The legal authority the Supreme Court cited would be equally applicable to Narragansett's ordinance. So I don't see any, I mean, obviously there's litigation going on right now. So there's some other issues that have come up, both procedurally and consistency with the comprehensive plan. But in my opinion, it's a legal ordinance. As far as the 4 unrelated, I think that Providence Supreme Court case also more or less cleared up the constitutionality issue on that one, because they did actually refer to Judge Fortunato's decision, the Rhode Island Supreme Court, as and they rejected it pretty soundly and explicitly. So just looking at the dicta or the language, to use layman terms, of that decision by the Rhode Island Supreme Court, I think we'd have no constitutional issues with the 4 unrelated case.
Do you know if other towns or cities have ordinances, these dual ordinances where one is student versus and then you also have an unrelated on the books at the same time?
I don't know about that. I can tell you there's a lot of municipalities, countrywide, nationwide, that have limitations on students. I was provided some materials with it's basically a spreadsheet of various college towns in each state and limitations they have. And it seems there's probably 40 or 50 towns, college towns on the spreadsheet that have some kind of limitation on student housing, how many students can live together. But as far as municipalities or cities that have a student ordinance and an unrelated ordinance at the same time, I don't know. I haven't really looked into that issue. I don't think you necessarily have to eliminate one. You could keep them both, and as the situation provides, go with your best option. They're on the books now. The expectation is right now that property owners should be following these ordinances. There's been a decision to delay enforcement, but that does not mean that there's not a legal obligation at this point to follow the ordinances. That's our position. So I think landlords need to keep that in mind as they're considering new leases. I know there's litigation, and they believe that there might be a situation where the ordinances are vacated by the court. On the flip side, the town might prevail in the litigation, And we might be in a position to enforce these very soon. And if these landlords have signed leases for this next academic year, they're doing so at their own risk.
And the penalty would be our standard fine that we have, because we didn't specify a penalty for this violation.
There's a catch-all penalty of $500 a day for a violation. So when we file a charge in municipal court for a violation, our goal usually is not penalizing people, it's compliance and deterrence. So if there is a violation filed in municipal court based on these ordinances, when the town makes a recommendation of what the proper fine should be and the judge is crafting his decision on what a penalty should be if the case is proven, those are going to be two things that we keep in mind. But again, the expectation and the hope is that landlords right now, understanding these ordinances are on the books, are going to follow and we won't have any issues.
Any other questions for Andy?
Yes, Andrew. Since we have a 3 and a 4 student unrelated policy, currently we don't have the staff to enforce that. Would you agree with that? I mean,
again, because this is uncharted territory for the town, I'm not sure how much resources or if we have adequate resource as it is right now.
Right.
That's probably something we'll have to discuss, come up with a plan and kind of see how things are going. I mean, if landlords are complying with the ordinance, then we're not going to need a lot of staff. If we're getting landslide of complaints and we might need to hire some more people or redirect town resources, that'd be a question more for Mr. Tierney.
also, this is complaint driven, correct?
That's typically how zoning violations go.
Right. And then say we just went with a 4 unrelated, 4 student policy. Wouldn't that cut down the demographics of enforcement and lower the burden of enforcement?
I'm not quite sure. I think whether it's 3 or 4, it's going to be the same approach to enforcement. Obviously,
Right.
if it's 4, that's going to eliminate a large class of properties that only have 3 bedrooms. So
Correct.
again,
Thank you.
that's a policy decision for you to make,
Right.
not a
Right.
enforcement
Right.
thing.
It's something to consider. Okay, because I think the 3 is pushing the 3-bedroom price up because, I mean, even if you have a 4-bedroom, it was $500-600 a bedroom. Now it's $700-800 a bedroom. So that's pushing up the cost for students, which is, it's just a ramification. So, all right, I'm good.
I have a question, but it's not for Andrew.
Is everyone all set? Because I have a urgent matter that's kind of popped up. I got to sign a arrest warrant as a justice of the peace. So
Thank you, Andy.
if you're okay with me signing off, I need to get that taken care of. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.
So I do have one question, probably for Patrick and Eva, because you're dealing with URI. Do we know what capacity they have for student housing at this moment compared to their population?
Well, they just built a big, what was it, 500 units or
Yeah. Full plus.
some, yeah. They just built a big dorm or, facility,
Yeah.
and they have plans on building more. It's just what happened was because of COVID,
Right.
they
Yeah,
scaled back, because of social distancing and all that stuff. They, so a lot of kids were left homeless. So,
Right. So, and we don't know yet, and probably
not
won't.
homeless like, orphans or anything, but
Yeah.
without residence to go to college. Okay.
Right.
I don't
So
wanna make a-
timing, as they say, timing is everything. But
Correct.
I guess, so that depending on what happens with COVID, if they are able to open the campus the way that it has been before COVID, maybe it'd be useful to know just how much inventory they have and how that, because obviously it does impact Narragansett.
Certainly. And this is
Good
the
to know that.
information that we need to,
Right.
come up with a cohesive plan here.
Right. I'd be curious to also know if they end up with excess housing because kids would prefer to live in Narragansett,
Right.
which is an interesting concept.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
And
all right.
the cool students live in Narragansett.
Stop it.
I'm gonna start a run on real estate here. All right.
All right. Eva? Good?
I'm good.
Okay. Jim, are you ready for your new responsibilities?
Already contacted Newport a few months ago, spoken to them because they have a part-time code compliance inspector or officer that they use, but it's new. It's really just getting off the ground. They're putting it together right now. So I'm gonna meet up with them some more, have some more discussions regarding this, see how it would be applicable to us. They have a student population similar to us with Salve, so just not as many.
Great. Before we go, did anyone have any questions for Chief Corrigan? No? Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your time. Thank you to staff for being on and for everyone who called in. Was there anything, Terry, that I missed?
Nope, all set. Thank you.
Just popped up. I wasn't sure. Normally you pop up when I do something wrong.
Sorry.
But anyway, thank you. Good discussion. And we'll be dealing with this as we move forward. Have a good night.
All right.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.